The Ham Radio Camper Caravan trailer is finally here, guys. Let's take a look at the trailer itself, the radio equipment, the power supplies, the solar energy, and everything else that goes into making this happen. Stick with me, and I'll tell you all about it. All right, guys, let's go.
You are listening to the Emergency Broadcast Systems. This station broadcasts emergency news and official information on the air for assigned area.
We've spent a lot of time on the channel operating portable ham radio stations off-grid, from tents, from our bicycles, from skis, from remote cabins in the Arctic, and even while hiking with our dogs. Well, I'm finally happy to announce that the Ham Radio Camper Caravan has finally arrived. Now, the Caravan is a classic. It's from 1983. It's called a CI Sprite Musketeer. Now, the camper is old and it was certainly dirty when it arrived, but it's got a lot of history that came along with it. I'm certainly looking forward to sharing some of the history of this old classic as the series progresses. Now, as I mentioned in a previous video, I was gifted this opportunity to acquire this old classic. Now, it certainly isn't what we'd consider a ham radio camper caravan yet, but we're working towards that goal. Here's the conceptual art of the caravan I made earlier on using AI. Now, you'll have to use your imaginations here, but what we're going for is a completely self-contained, off-grid RV or camper caravan, complete with solar power and communications gear. We can think about it in very much the same way we think about the off-grid ham shack, my home station, except that it's much more flexible and much more portable. And needless to say, there's a lot of work to be done on the camper caravan before it's deployed out in the field. Now, one of the first things I wanted to do was find out how I can utilize the solar panels, the portable solar panels that I have, to augment the incoming solar energy for the camper caravan. Ultimately, that's a no-brainer. We'll use multiple charge controllers for the various strings of solar panels, whether they're attached permanently to the camper caravan or not. Just as it is with the off-grid ham shack, sustainable off-grid power is a critical aspect of this ham radio caravan camper caravan, whatever you want to call it. So for solar power, I'll be putting 4 100-watt Retevis semi-flexible panels up on the roof. Those solar panels will be wired into a few Genason GV10L charge controllers, which themselves will be connected in parallel to the battery. Incoming and outgoing current and voltage level will be monitored by a Victron smart shunt, along with bus bars which will route to the internal cabin lighting, the refrigerator, and all of the radio equipment in the shack. For my battery storage, I'll be using the Power Queen 280 amp hour 12.8 volt lithium iron phosphate battery. This is an insane amount of power, much more than the lead acid leisure battery that was in there previously. It's also a fraction of the weight. So far, I've built a shelf for the Power Queen battery, and I've installed one of the 4 solar panels up on the roof. Isn't it crazy how it always starts raining when you're trying to do something which requires heat and sun? Anyway, I'll get at least one more of those solar panels up on the roof before we head out next week. Now, one of the reasons I use these Retevis semi-flexible solar panels was because they're a fraction of the weight of the glass with aluminum framed typical solar panels. Now, even though we have the camper caravan trailer being pulled by the Subaru Outback, it's still important to be mindful of the weight. I wouldn't like to add a lot of unnecessary weight if I can get away with it. Now, for mounting the solar panels, I used an adhesive called Sikaflex 521 UV. The UV stands for ultraviolet, of course. Now, this Sikaflex 521 is really good at bonding dissimilar materials. So the top of the Caravan and, for example, the material the solar panels are made of, they're dissimilar. The 521 Sikaflex is perfect for this. I'm honestly starting to wonder if that Sikaflex 521 was overkill, but anyway, these semi-flexible solar panels are never coming off. Now here you can see it finally stopped raining and I had a chance to put up the second 100 watt panel up on the Caravan. I didn't show it in the video, but I started by pressure washing the top of the Caravan and then thoroughly cleaning the surfaces of the solar panel and the roof of the Caravan. This allows the Sikaflex 521 to adhere to both surfaces effectively. As I mentioned a little while ago, the first reason for using these semi-flexible Reno-G panels was their weight or lack of weight. The second reason was I could mount them to the roof of the Caravan trailer in a way that no one would see them if they weren't actually looking at them from above. So there's this whole gray man effect that allows me to power up the Caravan, my radio equipment, the lights, and all the equipment inside the trailer without anyone actually getting a clue that there's solar power on the roof. So for now, there's going to be 2 solar panels up on the roof, and I'm going to augment these solar panels with one of my folding solar panels from PowerFilm. I wish it were possible to use one of the thin film solar panels as an awning on the side of the trailer, but PowerFilm says they researched that, and they were able to make it light enough, they were able to mount it, even able to make them rollable, so they roll up like the awning on the trailer, but they couldn't make them cheap enough in this format, so that was kind of a bummer. Anyway, the flexible solar panel is still light enough to lay across the awning when the awning is deployed. Anyway, apologies for that rambling. So, the second solar panel is up. I'll put a couple of kettlebells on top of some wood to hold it down for 24 hours, and it'll be a permanent installation. So I'm very happy with the installation of the solar panels. It was much easier than I thought, but I did make kind of a mess and had a lot of cleanup to do afterwards. Nevertheless, the solar panels are rock solid on the roof. Now, one other thing I had to do, and I was very reluctant about, was drilling holes in the roof for the cables coming from the solar panels. Ultimately, there's no way around it. We're going to need that hole in the roof. We're going to need the membrane. We're going to need more Sikaflex. And we're going to need to get that access way squared away. Now, in the process of drilling this hole, I realized that this is actually an Alpine model. My trailer is actually an Alpine model, and it's got a thick layer of insulation on the roof, on the floor, on the walls. And I didn't know that previously. I thought it was plywood or fiberglass or something like that. So this was, it was a good thing. Ironically, drilling that hole in the roof was probably the easiest part of the job done so far. So it was uneventful, and actually the membrane is up there and doing its job. So far we've got the solar panels up there. We've got the hole drilled in the roof. We've got the cable membrane mounted and sealed securely up on the roof, and we've got the cables coming from the solar panels down into the cabin of the Caravan. I still need to do some cable management up on the roof, and well, you guys who have been around a while, you know I always have problems with cable management. However, we're at an advanced enough stage that we can go ahead and do some testing. For this test, I just ran my cables coming from the solar panels to a charge controller, connected them to the battery, and the battery to the radio. Kept it simple. We'll do a more comprehensive video on how everything goes together properly later on. For testing, I used my ICOM IC705. I used an off-center fed dipole, an 80-meter off-center fed dipole from November 9 Sierra Alpha Bravo. And I used the carbon fiber telescopic mast from Gigaparts. With this equipment, I was able to do some successful winlink sessions as well as run some Affiiate trials across HF and 6 meters. Ultimately, the caravan's going to have an HF radio or two. It's going to have mesh-tastic. It's going to have DMR radios for VHF and UHF. It's also going to have the latest amplifier from Oliver, Delta Lima 4 Kilo Alpha. But most importantly, the caravan's going to remain modular so that we could set it up as an off-grid bug-out vehicle if the world ever gets that bad. That's about it for this video, guys. Let me know in the comments what you want to see in part 2. We have two choices, either the radio amplifier and antenna setups, or we can go through the off-grid power and solar strategy for the camper trailer. And with that, if you like what I'm doing, if you like the content I'm creating, please let me know by leaving me a comment, a thumbs up, or a super thanks to let me know. And if it's not too much to ask, please share this video with someone or somewhere where other operators might appreciate it. Rock and roll, guys. You're all absolutely awesome. Thanks for watching. Ciao.